today. It's really wonderful. This is my second time to the Netherlands, and it feels like home. And I look forward to coming back some more. Hey, I want to say a big shout out to the band. Was that not great this morning? Good job. Great job, I tell you. And Pastor Sebastian, we've already done that, but man, thank you for hosting this. Thank you so much. And the lead team here in the Netherlands. Let's give them a hand. In a little bit, you're going to hear from Pastor Jimmy Rollins. Great word from Pastor Rick. Pastor Rick's one of my favorite people in all the world. I had pastored a small church in Louisiana and then came over to Baton Rouge, and you were one of the first people that just really connected with me and loved on me, and then I later went on staff, and just a dear friend for probably 25 years, so it's great. And then I've also got Will Johnson here with me. Will, just wave your hand. And yeah, sometimes we call him Will Smith. He looks a little like Will Smith, and great guy. But I tell you, he's a sharp leader, one of the student leaders at the campus that we're at, and he's been with me with ARC Global for about a year. So hope you get to connect with him. Pastor Greg Surratt, and who's our president, and just sends his love to you guys. And he's been here before, of course, and Pastor Dino Rizzo was here last year, and he said to be sure and give you a big shout out as well. So we're so excited to be here. I get to tell the ARC story from a little different angle than Rick did just now, and I've actually got, I think I have some pictures that they're going to put up there. Go ahead and load those pictures, and there they are. This is the original 6. Now, I want you to hear the ARC story. It's really a cool story, but I think you're going to find it dovetails a lot with what's going on here, some of the lessons that we learned, and that's what I want to bring to you. So on the top left, you're going to see Greg Surratt, who's our current president, the one that Pastor Rick mentioned a few minutes ago about supporting them in the early days. Next is Dino Rizzo, who's the executive director. He had pastored a large church in Baton Rouge. And then you have Billy Hornsby. Billy has gone to be with the Lord. Billy led ARC for 10 years as the president, and really ARC is where it is today because of Billy. And I believe he's been here before. He loved music, he loved food, he loved food, he loved music, and he loved food. And I tell you, the interesting thing about him, he could come to some strange city in some country, and he could pick out the restaurant that you had been passing by all your life, and sure enough, it was the best food in the world. He had a knack. He was good at it. And so he led ARC well and passed away in 2011. Then on the bottom left, I believe you have Chris Hodges, and then Rick Bezet. Chris and Rick planted the same day, February 4th, 2001. And then Scott Hornsby on the bottom right, who is Billy's brother and is still a part of the team. And then you have Gail. I always like to throw in Gail, the 6 plus Gail, because Gail took notes when the 6 met. Gail tells the story that she took a lot of notes as they talked about what ARC would look like, and then she said the guys would say, "No, that's not going to work," and she would throw that paper away. And then they would start talking, and she would write more. And the reason is like Pastor Rick said, they made a lot of key decisions at the beginning not to make it something that it shouldn't be. So they said, let's don't be controlling. Let's don't govern this thing. Let's don't be a denomination. Let's don't get into licensing and ordaining. Others can do that, but let's be a family. Let's be a network. And really, here's the key thing that I want you to know. These guys came together not because they thought it would be a cool thing to start a network. They came together because there were issues going on in America. Now, you guys don't have issues in the Netherlands, but in America, we got some issues. And so there were 3 issues that I think they really hit up on and that were an issue. And number 1, pastors were isolated and lonely. Rick talked about that a few minutes ago. And look, it was the culture of the church, and it was bad. And they said, if we don't do anything else, we've got to stick together, and we're going to emulate friendships. I'm going to talk about that a little more in a minute, but that was a huge issue. I'm telling you, if you pushed everything away from ARC, it still bleeds relationships. And so the answer to that was relationships. We got an issue. So in other words, don't start something to create a name for yourself, but start something in answer to what is going on. And so the question was, how do we keep pastors from being isolated and lonely? We're gonna make it relational. Number two, the culture in America had shifted. I've been in the ministry 35 years, and I remember in the 90s, I just began to sense things changing. The 70s and 80s in America, you could just open the doors and it just seemed like they came in. And in the 90s, there just began to be there was a new generation that arose that just didn't have context. It didn't make sense. And where you could say, in the days before, you could say, and Joshua marched around Jericho, and everybody would say, amen, that was good. The new generation said, who is Joshua and who is Jericho? And so, and really, and so if you're going to do that, you don't change the message, or the gospel stays just as powerful today as it was 2,000 years ago. But the way the delivery is, the messaging, the way it's presented has to be rethought if you're going to engage your culture right. So the answer was relevancy. It's interesting. One of the things about to know the relevancy or something is to know how or why it is important. And pastors that don't get this say, well, it doesn't matter. You just need to believe it because the Bible said it. But if you want to be relevant, you say, it's okay. I'll help you break that down and understand why it's important and how it's important. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you're going to reach your culture, you have to, relevancy is not watering it down. Relevancy is taking what the message is and making sure that the hearers get it. And so that was very important. The third thing, churches were not open-handed towards church planners. I mean, they would just say, hey, if you're going to go do that, let's get your keys, head on out the door, God bless you, but that's about it. And ARC said, hey, what if we were generous? What if we actually put something in their hands? I can't tell you what a huge deal this is. When church planners come to us, and look, a lot of them feel, they're intimidated. But they have a dream in their heart, and when you say, hey, I like that dream, here's some money, they say, you're kidding. It's like Pastor Rick said, you go in the bathroom and you cry. They call their wife on the phone, they say, I think these guys actually believe in us. And so it does. I have the opinion that it doesn't even matter how much money it is. It's the fact that you say, we believe in you, here's something to help you go get started. So those three things, they had to answer some questions. And I tell you, those questions will keep changing. You have your own questions here. Maybe it dovetails with some of this. But the key to ARC and your church is growing in the Netherlands is you have to address issues that are real. God has always meant for the church to succeed, for it to do well, for it to reach people, for it to be fruitful. But you do have to stop and think, okay, what does it take to get us there? So ARC addressed those issues. First year, 2 churches were birthed, Rick and Chris. They started off, they both did well. They came out of the chute. I think Chris had maybe 400, Rick had 500 or something like that the first weekend. And then it always drops about half, and then it starts rebuilding. By the end of the year, they were both very strong. They each had gotten some money to help them with equipment, and they took that same money. Here's a key component of how ARC has been able to make it. They took some money that was given to them to help them buy equipment, and at the end of the year, they took that and they put it back into a fund for the next guys to use. And they kept giving to it. And so the next year, the second year, 3 churches were planted. Randy Bizet, Troy Parker, Robert Spradley. And so the money that they had used, Randy, Rick's brother, took it and he used some money. And Robert Spradley used some money. And then when they got their church going, they put it back into the fund. And the next year we planted 5 churches. Isn't that cool? Do you know now we plant 80 to 100 churches a year, and we have never run out of money. Never. Isn't that cool? It's a brilliant model. We're going to give it to the church planter to help them get that rocket off the ground, and then they take it and they give it to the next guy. So the organization, I don't have to get on a plane and say, hey, I wish you'd consider giving to ARC. We're about to go down the tube. You know, if you don't help, we can't plant. No, when you're generous, whatever the amount is, when you're generous and you're open-handed, God blesses that. So we have, I think this is one of the coolest stats. 93% of our churches, we planted over 600, are still going after 5 years. You guys can do this. I'm telling you. Now, I want to give you 5 core values real quickly that have enabled ARC to plant strong and keep going as a network. Number 1, and I alluded to this earlier, we really made it about relationships. Now, I just want to say to you as pastors, if I could give you one starting place on growing your church, this is going to come across a little weird because you would think, well, it's of this or that. I tell you, what I would recommend is find some friends. You will be amazed at what relationships in your life can add to you. You need that. These 6 guys decided early on, this is so key, they said, look, people on the outside of this room may think we're big dogs or they may think we're little dogs, but we know who we are, we know our strengths and our weaknesses, and we're going to believe in each other until the end. Now, you need friends like that. When we have a church planting training, we will have 100 to 150 walk in the door. You know what their goal is? When they immediately sense the relational culture. They're not walking in saying, okay, where's Rick Bezet? I want to be his best friend. They walk in the door and they start connecting with each other. But that doesn't happen unless his value starts at the top. And relationships have to be invested in. So I just give you that word today. I think that for some of you pastors, I'm telling you, you've got to have friends. Second word, we made it about a big field and not a little pasture. That's an interesting way to put it, but here's what we decided early on with ARC, is we're not going to make it about a small group of people that are doing the exact same thing, singing the same songs, doing ministry exactly the same way, just so we can keep it pure. I'm telling you, purity, there's something in you that will always say, man, we got to make sure everybody's believing exactly the same way. When in actuality, God is building his kingdom all over the earth with all kinds of people, and it's okay to connect with them, and sometimes they will add value to you that you didn't even expect them to. Do you know, I think this is so interesting because I've had calls over the years. Y'all need to watch the doctrine now. Some people might get off on their doctrine. Can I tell you, in 16 years, we have never had one doctrinal issue. Is that not interesting? We could have come in at the beginning and say, all right, you need to sign this document right here. Now look, everybody's keeping up with the same Christian tenets of the faith. But if you're open-handed and you're empowering to people, and I would think about that as a pastor of your church. Number 3, we created a resource-rich environment for church planners. And so we made sure that, I think of it this way, and I'd love for you guys to think of it as you're doing a similar thing in the Netherlands. It's like a table, and a table has food on it. And you want some good food on that table. And, you know, now I can name some American items, but, you know, we're going to have some veggies on the table, and we're going to have some potatoes and some green beans, and we're going to have some pot roast and maybe some fish. And so the table has to be there. You want a table for church planters. And so if the table is set, then there are things for them to come and receive from. So on the church planting table, there's friendships, there's training, there's coaching, there's helping them assess, is this the right time? And so it's I tell you, there's fathering at that table. And so they come and they find what they need from the table. And I think that's a resource-rich environment. You are creating a place where church planners can come and take what they need to be successful. You believe in them. You say, man, I believe in you, and I want to make sure you have what you need. And then we train them in the practical side of church planting. Here's the thing, that when some guys, when some groups will come to our church planner training, here's what they are expecting. They are expecting for us to get up there and to preach to them. And you need to believe the Great Commission. And we just preach at them all day long. Look, they can get that back at their home church. They've got to have a sending church that's going to send them out and prepare them. So when they get to us, what we need to do is help them with the practical side. So we teach them how to build a team, how to raise funds. What do you do in month 4 before you launch? What should you be doing in month 2 before you launch? What does a budget look like? What should you invest your money in? What should you not invest your money in? What should it look like the first week after you launch? And so the training, I can't tell you how important the practical side is. Now that translates different all over the world. It's interesting, we have an ARC in China, in Australia, here, in Ireland, in Canada, in South Africa. One's forming in Italy, one's forming in Brazil. Everywhere is different. Every place has to create its own contextualized model. But you want to put tools in their hands. Everybody with me? Then the last one is we just work hard to select the right guys. For us, it's very, I don't mind having a conversation with a church planner, and I've done this for 10 years now. They'll come to the assessment, and they are so impassioned, and man, and I have to pull them aside. I say, look, I love your heart. I love your vision, but you're not ready. You need a little more time. You've been married 1 year. Let's make that 2. Your finances are very weak right now. I don't know that you can take care of your wife. Let's get that in place first. Man, you've never done anything in a local church. Get back there and build some teams. Grow something in a ministry. Grow a men's ministry or youth ministry. Get yourself there before you get under the pressure of having to pay the bills every week and preach and all of these other things. So we say, slow it down. We still believe in you, but get it, and then once you get ready, you can launch out and do great. So it's important, those 5 things. Now, the Netherlands needs more churches. I am convinced that when you have church plans, even if you have another one in your city, it actually raises the number of believers in the city. And so it's so good. You love the people of your city. You have your own voice, so you never have to fear somebody else planting a church as if that's going to topple you. It's not either or. It's both and. And God's hand is on the Netherlands. And I got a few stats for you here, and I'm going to run through these. In the U.S., the average age of our church planner is 25 to 45. Now, we can plan a 50-year-old. I'm telling you, when you get up around 50, 55, really, I think you have a calling to be a father. These young guys need you. Sometimes I'll ask a guy, what's your passion? I'll ask a 53-year-old, what's your passion? He says, brother, I just love to minister the word. I said, well, that doesn't quite sound like a church planner. Do you realize you're going to be sitting at Starbucks for about 6 months trying to convince people to be on your team long before you're pioneering. So our average age, I think we planted 2, I think Kyle Turner was maybe 24, I can't remember. So we've had a couple of guys we planted young, but at 25 to 45. The Netherlands has a population of 17 million people. 20% of that group is in that age group, 25 to 45. That means there are 3,400,000 between the ages of 25 and 45 in the Netherlands. Here's something I'm going to give you that I've never seen in the scripture, so Pastor Sebastian may correct it later, but I'm going to say it anyway. Here is my dream. I am asking the Lord everywhere I go for 1 out of every 1,000 to be a church planter. That's what I dream about. I would actually love for it to be 1 out of every 100. But if I could meet 1,000 people on the street, I'm saying, God, please let there be at least one to plant a church. Do you know what I'm saying? So that number is 3,400 people. Let me say it this way. I'm going to be so bold. I may be wrong, but I'm going to be so bold as to say that this is not an idea that I'm giving to God, but that this is a God idea that He already has in place, and that there are 3,400 people walking around Holland today with a call of God on their life, and they don't know what to do with it. Do you know what I'm saying? 3,400 is my number. I think it's probably higher. Now look, I was telling the staff yesterday, I remember my BC days. As a college kid, I was drunk probably 3 or 4 times a week, just partying, having a good time, passed out in different places, really was not even interested in the Lord. And yet I'm walking around with a call to be a pastor. How many people are in the streets of Amsterdam, red light district, wherever they are, the streets all over this area, all over this nation, all over, we got some Belgian pastors here. How many people are walking around marked with a call to do something great for God and don't know what to do with it? So what do you do? I'm not asking you to have faith for 3,400 people. I'm saying I think that's already a done deal. I think they're already out there. I think the faith for you is to prepare the table. Could you prepare a table for those 3,400? You say, well, how will we get them? I don't know, but I know now. I know when ARC started, we planted 2 churches and the next year 3. Now, every week, 8 to 10 people go online and start the process with us. Where did they come from? I don't know, but we have a table, and they've heard about it. And some who never dreamed of church planting have begun to see, they've watched their friends, and they say, my gosh, I think maybe that's what I've been wrestling to do. Let me say it another way. In the book of 1 Samuel, you have the story of little Samuel who's in a very corrupt religious system with Eli, Hophni, and Phinehas. They're sleeping around with the temple prostitutes, all kinds of stuff going. 3 times God speaks to little Samuel there in the night, and he doesn't know who it is. You remember that story, don't you? He keeps hearing this voice. Fourth time, he goes and talks to Eli. Eli says, hey, just say, speak, Lord, your servant hears. 4 times the Lord spoke. I just believe tonight that there are people that will hear that voice and they don't know what that voice means. There's a call. So I say, if nothing else, let's build a table. Let's create a table. Let's put some stuff on there. Some of you guys are fathers. I mean, I feel it. There is a fathering spirit on you. And I'm telling you, these young guys, they need it. They need somebody to put their arm around them and say, hey, man, you can do this. To look at them and say, hey, I know you're impassioned. I know you're doing a good job, but are you taking a day off? Are you thinking about your wife? What if you walked into a store, would you know what to buy your wife? No, I always struggle with that. Well, maybe it's because you're not spending enough time with your wife to know what your wife would want when you go to buy a gift. So are you focused on that? Some of you have had your day, and your day is not over. Your day is coming into the next level, but the next level may not be planting. It may be shepherding and loving on the next generation that is going to plant. So could we put a little fathering at the table? How about a little funding? I'm telling you, if you would take a portion of your missions budget, we feel like every church ought to just give 10% away. Just like you ask your people to tithe, a church that gives to missions, you can find some international missions. There's great things all over the world. You can look around your city and find things to do in your city. But what we realized in America is pastors didn't know how to change their nation. And we said, take a portion of your missions dollars. We do 2%. You have 10% for missions, so we say 2% for ARC. Nobody in ARC gives more than 2%. But churches do that. They say, here's my 2%. Another guy says, here's mine. Another guy. Sometimes churches join ARC, and it's in the middle of the year. They've already got all their budget done, but they said, look, we're gonna put a little bit in the pot every year, every month until we can get ourselves up to that. But what it does, it creates something that when these young couples come up and they have a dream, you give them a big hug. You say, hey, we believe in that. You can do that. You can change Minneapolis. You can change Destin, Florida. You can change Seattle. You can do this. And then on that table, we put some coaching and we put some training, we put some resources. So this is my dream. This is my dream for Holland, for Belgium. I believe God's hand is greatly on you guys. And I do believe that the same things that we did in America, you may have to find out exactly what the needs are here, but I think they could be very similar. And I just want to say one more time, Rick's already said it once, I'm saying it again. You need friends. And if you come together, it's amazing what will happen. I look at that meeting 16 years ago. I mean, I don't think you guys had any idea. I mean, hey, let's just create a table for the guy. Let's just do this right now. The first year, they had 35 at their conference, much less than the people in this room, but they were fired up. They were excited because they were in relationship. I mean, year 7 and year 8, we were still in my dining room. There was no world headquarters. We weren't trying to create that. We're trying to focus on the table. So what started with us, I believe, will start with you guys too. Can I just pray for all right, let's just pray together. Father, I thank you, Lord. I thank you for the dreams. Thank you for the dreams in this room. I thank you for the work of your Holy Spirit to bring us together. God, I thank you that even at lunch and even at the breaks, there's divine relationships, divine encounters, divine conversations that may seem small and frivolous right now, but can grow into something great. God, you are doing amazing things throughout this earth, and we just want to be right up in the middle of it, God, just doing our little part. We love you so much. In Jesus' name.